Today on Our Queen. Am I the for telling my husband that his daughter is ugly? So my husband has 2 kids, a 7-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy, from 2 different long-term relationships in which he ended up being cheated on. When we were dating, I used to keep a diary in which I would disclose every detail of my thoughts and emotions. My husband found my diary and took it upon himself to read it. He was really upset one day, and I asked him why. He finally went on to say that he read my diary and didn't know if we should be together because I wrote in there that his daughter is ugly. Oof. I did not outright say that to him. It wasn't for him to ever read. I haven't written in my diary since, but I really hurt his feelings. I think she's a kind and sweet child, but she's not pretty to me at all. With our own child here now, he likes to say, I'm batting 3 for 3, while looking at me for confirmation. I don't say anything, but I think to myself, 1.5 out of 3 ain't bad. I never say anything bad about his other kids, and I treat them like my own. Am I the for saying his daughter is ugly? Wow.
Oh my God, everyone is awful. She's awful for putting in writing that his daughter's ugly. She's 7. Who wants to put that out in the universe, that a 7-year-old is ugly? But also, he shouldn't have been reading your diary. People put in their diaries things that are unfiltered thoughts, and I think no good comes from reading another person's private emotions and private thoughts because they haven't processed it. This is how a lot of people process them. She also, though, doubles down at the end saying, 1.5 out of 3 ain't bad.
There's no coming back from that.
We shouldn't laugh. This is funny because it's so horrible. No, there's no coming back from that. Why would you put that into the universe?
Especially since she says she didn't write anything since, so that was the last important thing in her mind.
Yes, this is the last time she felt her emotions and thoughts were so important she had to put them into writing. Your daughter's ugly.
Your daughter is ugly.
It's the weirdest thing to focus on. I think she's such a sweet and kind kid, but she's hideous. What a weird thing to say about a kid.
Remember that video's been going on the socials about the friend is clearly showing her grandma her friend's baby, and the grandma doesn't realize it's FaceTime.
That kid was fresh out of the womb, so the kid was still a little small.
But maybe this kid is just not good looking.
It doesn't matter.
He shouldn't have read her diary. It's a weird thing to put down.
Somebody told me once at work, never put anything in an email you wouldn't want to see splashed on a front page. I've always taken that to heart. This would be another thing. Don't put in your diary what you wouldn't want the person you're closest to read. Not that they should, but they could. And you calling his kid ugly is pretty Him reading your diary, also pretty Everyone's awful here, except apparently this 7-year-old girl, who she thinks is not pretty. Who says that about a 7-year-old?
Yeah. Maybe she's just having an ugly face.
That's terrible.
Am I for telling my wife to stop being a pushover, or I would take away her spending privileges? My wife, who's a 25-year-old female of 5 years, has a sister who's 20. She's somewhat disabled, and while this may sound contradictory, she has a condition which makes working difficult, but not entirely impossible unless she's under stress. She has a neurological condition that makes her lose muscle control, makes her hit and throw stuff, and fall over. I have no problem with her sister. She is sweet and nice to have around. My wife loves her more than anything. She basically raised her and stepped in when her parents wouldn't or couldn't. This has led to a relationship closer to mother-daughter. My wife would constantly be paying for stuff for her sister, and this made sense to me when she was a minor and was doing much worse health-wise. Recently, though, this has been increasingly getting under my skin. I am the sole provider for my household right now since my wife was pregnant and only gave birth recently. We'd spend a lot to buy her sisters gifts for holidays, which she would never return the favor, even with something cheap with thought, or no thought, put into them. We'd always take her out to events or dinner and pay for her every time. She would never even pick up the bill for herself. Again, wasn't entirely an issue until she became an adult, and now I'm fed up with it. She expects her sister to do things, like pay for her to go to the doctor, or invites us out to lunch and then expects us to pay. She doesn't even schedule her own appointments. My wife takes her wherever she asks, even if she has the ability to do it herself, and we live 45 minutes away. She always talks about how she's freelancing and is making money, but somehow has no money whenever she needs or wants anything. I did not have an issue with this either, really. I thought my wife was being a pushover, but it's ultimately her money, until recently. Now she's been spending my money on her, and it's really getting me angry. I want to spend my money on my daughter, but we're spending money on this financially irresponsible leech. I explained this to my wife in a much nicer way, but we ended up in a fight where I called her sister some pretty messed up things. I ended the conversation by telling her I would take away her access to our joint account until she contributes again, if she doesn't tell her sister to grow up and that she is not her mother and she is no longer a child. She cannot be dependent on people forever. I think it's an important lesson for her to learn. If she doesn't learn it, she can get back to work and continue supporting her until she's 40 with her own money, not mine. She honestly thinks this is an end-of-the-world situation. I think it's quite clear that this is for the better. I think she's scared of hurting her sister, but at this point, she's crippling her by allowing her to do nothing. And the OP has an edit here. I should have worded it better in my post. I just meant having the debit card and using money on her sister, not taking away all her access to money, but setting a limit, or giving her cash so she can't just get suckered into paying for stuff. A lot of the criticism still stands despite this, but I want to clarify I'm not taking away her access to all the money entirely. I also understand the comments about my wife being a homemaker means she's putting in equal work so my money is her money. But we are on a single income and we can barely afford our family's needs. I can't give her half my salary so she can spend half of that on her sister. A majority of it goes to keeping us paycheck to paycheck right now. So what do you think?
I think you know that the way this is worded is going to make me ragey. Just having gone from being independent and being able to do, for the most part, whatever I wanted with my money, to then having a child and being dependent on you. And it is odd to no longer be able to spend exactly how you want. So he does have a point that they do have to talk about how money is spent now, especially if money's tight. And that's reasonable that money's tight. They have a baby and she's not working. That's not how joint accounts work, my guy. You don't get to limit your wife's access to it because it is your joint money. She is doing all of the house labor. She's doing, I would guess, the majority of the childcare. That is a lot. So to say you're taking away her privileges, this just makes me so angry, this whole post. I appreciate that they probably had very separate finances before this, so they never had these discussions. But for him to not have expected this, she's been doing this since they met, presumably, to just assume it's your right to limit her access to funding because you don't agree with the way she's spending some of the joint funds. That's the most wrong-headed way to approach it, and it's not a partnership at this point. He sounds like he's trying to control this when he should have a partner and they should be discussing this.
The thing that jumps out for me is where he says, I have no problem with her sister. She is sweet and nice to have around. But then he also says, I want to spend money on my daughter, but we're spending money on this financially irresponsible leech. I'd also like to know what the condition the sister has, because it sounds pretty serious if she's like hitting and throwing stuff, falling over, losing muscle control, and just like, that doesn't sound like a healthy person, even if that's getting better. What does she have going on? But that aside, this sounds like the emotional outburst of a boy who's overwhelmed by the fact that they're living paycheck to paycheck and can't afford this, especially right now because we have a kid who has to become the priority. And he's saying a bunch of things in whatever tone or whatever way he's saying it. He needs to have a conversation with his wife. Like, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you have to start making choices.
Oh, I agree. And I think they need to have a serious discussion about money. But I wonder how he approached her. Because basically he's explained to her that she's a pushover and her sister is a lazy leech. When really what the actual issue is the spending of family money. It doesn't really matter what the spending is, because it sounds like the spending itself is the problem, and leave the sister out of it.
Am I the for mansplaining to my girlfriend? I personally don't think this is an issue of mansplaining, but I want to present her perspective of the issue fairly and objectively. I don't want to make this story seem completely one-sided, like some of those other stories I read on here. I'm a 23-year-old male, and I'm someone who loves fun facts. I love telling my friends and family fun facts and seeing their faces light up with the same interest as mine had when I first learned the fact. I've been getting the feeling lately that my girlfriend, who's a 23-year-old female, isn't really treating me with respect. When she talks to me, she acts kind of withdrawn and dismissive, and I sometimes feel like she responds to me as though she's like a boss speaking to a subordinate. Whenever I tell her things, she may be listening or she may not be. Yesterday, I told her a fun fact about how styrofoam containers aren't actually made of styrofoam. Instead, they are made from a material known as polystyrene. And she didn't even blink, as she just said, okay. Today, we were over at a friend's house for dinner, and she let us take some pasta home for leftovers. I heard my girlfriend say, hand me the styrofoam container. I got a little annoyed, since this was proof that she doesn't give a about the things I say. So I said in an annoyed voice, it's made of polystyrene, not styrofoam, but I guess it doesn't matter what I say since you won't listen anyway. After that, all hell basically broke loose. And my girlfriend is refusing to talk to me because I was rude. even though I was literally just pointing out how she is being disengaged and disrespectful to me by not caring about the things I say and making me feel kind of unimportant. So what do you think?
Well, the tone is something else. Just saying, I don't want to make the story seem completely one-sided, like those other stories. But he's the same guy who says, I'm a nice guy, not like those other guys. Meanwhile, being an insufferable guy. I don't know that this was necessarily mansplaining, but it's a common term for what she was asking for. It doesn't necessarily mean she wasn't listening to him, but it's the word everyone uses for it.
Well, that's the thing that kind of stuck out to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought styrofoam is like a brand name. So like polystyrene, but it's the styrofoam brand, like tissues, but it's the Kleenex brand. But people will say, hey, pass me a Kleenex, and you know what they mean. I know that's not the point, but it just kind of stuck out to me as like, and he's wrong.
I just looked it up, and let me womansplain this to you. Styrofoam is the brand name of a bunch of polystyrene construction products.
So yeah, I think he is the
And I feel like his girlfriend is probably like, enough with the facts.
I have no idea why she seems annoyed or just extremely tired of this guy's bullshit. Well, that's our queen. Subscribe, share, like, or comment if you think we got it right. Comment if you think we got it wrong. Until next time.